Hey guys, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft. I'm standing here in front of a Trek 820 that I picked up not too long ago. It was a second-hand bike. I thought I'd bring you in a little bit closer and show you some of the components and some of the things that I was looking for to make sure I was getting a good deal. So stand by, I'll bring the camera in a little bit closer, we'll take a look at this bike, and I'll show you why I decided to buy this one. Okay, let's start at the top of the bike and at the front with the handlebars, and we want to check and make sure that the shifters and the brake levers are all in working condition and that all of the functions work and that there's no cracks, scaling, pitting, or rust in these areas. Also, the condition of these cables right here could lend you to some reasonable, well, they could give you some ideas about how the bike was cared for. If they're all cracked up and there's rust right here where the cable stops are, inside of this is a stainless steel cable, and if these are rusted up, it would lend you to believe that the bike was outside more than kept in garage condition. And also, if everything is operating smoothly, it'll tell you if they were lubricated and kept in good working order. Now, as we move back into handlebar here, where the handlebar actually mounts onto the stem and this riser here, these bolts, if they're not rusty and if the handlebars are good and tight and they don't move, that's a good sign. Also, you want to check for any cracks or pitting, any type of rust in any of this area here that would might lend you to believe that the bike had taken a real hard hit from the front end. Coming down to where the frame is welded together, where it meets right here on this front tube, is also a critical area. Look at these welds real good for any cracks. The top of the top tube here, we have exposed cable, so it's real easy to check and see how they look. But pay most attention here to where the cables start to go back in to the cable sleeves. These little rubber pieces on here were in good shape, and if the rubber's in good shape, that's usually one of the first things that starts to deteriorate on a bike. As we move to the back, where the seat tube is, make sure that the function is operational. Now, I will tell you, when I bought this bike, that was the major issue. This seat tube would not move inside the frame. It was corroded and had not been lubricated, was put in a position and locked down, and I had to remove the existing seat and actually cut that seat tube out, which took quite a bit of work. You have to be real patient because you don't want to cut into the frame. But that was the only thing that I found that was an issue with this bike. But it caused me to be able to negotiate out a real good deal. Once again, checking all of these welds, anywhere on the frame where two pieces of metal come together and are welded, you want to check those areas very well. The seat itself, you know, having a seat that's in good shape is nice if you're just going to jump on it and ride it. But depending on who you are, what kind of conditions you ride in, and what your experience level is, you'll find that seats are very personal when they come to bicycles. It's probably as much controversy of the right seat for a bicycle as the right knife is for a woodsman. It's really a personal preference, and there's a lot of trial and error in it. The seat that was on here was not in the greatest shape, but I didn't care. I know that I like using a nice hard Brooks saddle. I used the padding in shorts, not the padding on the seats, so I knew I was going to be switching that saddle out anyway, so that was not a big deal for me. Back here in the back, having the availability to put a rack on this bike was very important to me for the type of work that I was planning on doing. So as you look in here where the rack attaches to the frame, there is a mounting bracket here, or a place where the bolts go in, and the same thing down at the bottom of the frame, down where the axle comes into the frame. There were also mounting holes here for a good substantial frame. As we transfer back up to the front of the bike, we'll look at a couple of components of the frame there. An item to check is to make sure that both sides of the brakes are operating against the wheel, and I like to lift it and rotate that and make sure that they're both coming in contact. That'll tell you what kind of condition the brakes are in themselves, but most of the time, if they're not operational and they're not rusted and pitted up, it's a simple adjustment that can be made at the bike shop or you at home if you're handy at all. They can get those back in working order. Now this bike has a suspension front fork. To test that, we want to apply the brakes and push down and make sure that when they compress and spring back out that there's no noise, no grinding in that, and that the function is smooth and not, well, if they start to wear sometimes they'll get in a bind, so you'll compress it down, you'll feel some grind, and then when you let it up, it pops back up. And we want to make sure that we know that, because replacing front suspension forks can get rather pricey. The tires themselves, once again, it was not something that I was real concerned about. The tires were pretty dry rotted on this bike, but I knew I was going to switch them out anyway. But what I was concerned about was the rim and the size of the rim. I wanted to make sure that I could put a street tire for high pressure, but yet also had enough flexibility in the size of the rim that I could put a decent on-road, off-road tire on the same rim and give me more function. So that way it would extend how I could ride that bike in different terrains just by switching out the tires and the tubes. It just extends the terrain. Well, like I said, it extends the terrain. You want to use a more knobby tire on soft and dirt and trails, where the slick tires like this with a higher pressure are nicer for road type use. Let's take a look at the axles right quick. Okay, front axles are absolutely critical to the operation of the bike, as well as the rim, making sure that all of the spokes are good and tight, there's none bent or missing. If any of them are not at the right torque, or if they're missing, it will cause the rim to start to act like a potato chip. That'll be very obvious when you spin this tire in those brakes. It'll rub as it goes around. Within the front axles, you want to make sure that they release and tension back down, holding the wheel tight, and also that you can remove it and put it back on easily. I like the bikes that have these quick releases. I would not consider buying a bike without them, because this makes changing the tire or fixing a flat require no tools, and that's exactly what you want. The only thing you might want to carry is some tire irons. I highly recommend that, but as far as removing the rim itself, you don't want to have tools to be loosening nuts and bolts. Now let's take a look at the rear wheel. Okay, here at the rear wheel, we want to pay particular attention, once we've checked the wheel itself, the same way as we did the front, of the derailleur here. We want to make sure that it moves smoothly, and as we start to shift our gears, it should transition us back and forth off of this rear cog. Now the other thing that we can look at while we're here is this cable. This is the cable that goes back to this unit, and this is what's going to affect a lot of our shifting. Sometimes if that cable is dry or frayed, that can affect the ability of this rear derailleur to move. This rear cog here, you want to look for corrosion and just dirt and grime and grit. That can also affect the shiftability of this particular unit. Now as we move forward, we come to the front chain rings, and on this bike we have 3, and we want to look at our teeth and just looking for rusting and pitting, and this front rail system here that guides our chain back and forth. This is also utilizes a cable that puts tension back and forth on this device, and it actually moves the chain to each one of these chain rings. So looking for wear marks or push marks on the inside of here where the chain has rubbed in a particular position, and as we go for our test ride, we want to listen to make sure that the chain is not rubbing on that. Okay, moving from our front derailleur, once again checking all of our frame welds. A nice thing to have are some water bottle cages. A lot of the bikes will have positions for 2 of those. That can come in real handy and is a great thing to have. Other than that, the next thing is to go on a test ride, making sure that the brakes, the shift, it can completely shift in and out of each gear, and that we're comfortable with the size and the fit of the bike. The crank arms and the pedals themselves, pedals are, you know, a dime a dozen. They can be switched out to whatever style you like. This one is set up with just a basic pedal so that I can jump on it and ride around without having to have special shoes or any type of retention system. The crank arms themselves are pretty robust. Very seldom have I ever found a lot of damage on those, but if you do find damage on a crank arm itself, that was a significant hit on that bike to bend that piece of metal. Now, this being able to turn free without hearing any grinding, down here in this bottom there's a cassette down there that holds all of the bearings, and most of the newer bikes it's all a sealed unit, and they're not a big deal to change and they're not real expensive, and as they start to go bad you can hear them starting to grind. If that thing moves nice and free and spins smoothly, that's a real good sign that that bottom crank is in, or the cassette is in, good shape. Okay guys, after we've checked all of those functions in the bike and we've made sure that this is something that we are interested in, it's time to give it the old test ride. There's no test like going out and actually riding it. But remember, when you do that, dress for the environment. A good pair of bike shorts, if you've got them, is a great thing to have with you. Proper footwear, a good hard-soled shoe is a great thing to have. Make sure you tuck those shoelaces in so you don't get them caught up in any of the chain mechanisms in the front. And a helmet is required in many states now in local cities. So having your equipment with you so that you can go out and ride safely is an important thing. And I think I'll take this one out and give it a try today. Until next time, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. God bless.